Hello, hey everyone, it's your girl Creatively Anzi here, and welcome to Melanin Gamers Bite Size Podcast. This one is not so bite sized, and I told you we'd be having guests, didn't I? And we have a very special guest today, Abubakar Salim, BAFTA nominated British actor, founder and CEO of Surgent Studios, master assassin. Yes, we are talking about the one and only voice actor of Bayek of Siwa, master assassin, the original assassin, founder of the Creed itself from AC Origins, and creator of one of the coolest games I have seen in a very long time, Tales of Kenzera, Zhao. A story with so much love, culture, and history, you'll be left moved. I know I was. We follow the story of Zhao, a grieving son who has just lost his father to a sickness and strikes a deal with death himself, Kalunga, god of death in Bantu culture, to bring his father back from the ancestral plane. What a premise for a story, am I right? We had the privilege of sitting down with this master story weaver to hear his inspiration behind the game.
Thank you. Sorry, I apologize if my sister is a little bit silent. She's a big fan of Assassin's Creed, and seeing one of her characters come to life has stunned her into silence. So I have to apologize on her behalf.
Bro, I
Um,
love I love this. This is gonna be great.
I agree.
Oh wow.
But today we're here to talk about Zhao and all its wonderfulness. So I want to talk to you about Abu. I want to talk to you, Abu, about the game and just like my first question, it was always the same question. What were you thinking getting into game dev?
I have no idea, man. I've no honestly, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm doing it. You know what? It was one of those ones where I think the idea of making a game and it was again it was driven by this sense of love for it, right, of wanting to do it, right, just making a game. And I kind of came into it with a bit ignorant in regards to like not really knowing how to make a game or where to start. So you know I was just reacting from seeing developers when I was working on Assassin's Creed Origins, how happy they were, and they actually enjoyed, they enjoyed the process of making it, they enjoyed the idea and building a game. And I was just reacting from that. It's very different from film and TV, where a lot of the time, a job's a job. You come in, you do your thing, and then you move on. Whereas with this, it felt like everyone here were artists and they wanted to put something in there. Even the coders, man, like everyone was. And like, the opportunity to be able to do that and to be able to express in something like that, especially having played so many games, and growing up with games, it just made sense. But now I'm in it. If I knew now what I did back then, I probably would have been like, actually, you know what? I think the idea is cool, but I'm gonna take it easy.
As you actually touched upon something I really wanted to dive into about because like us, we're gamers, so we really enjoy games, but creating game is different. But you're by profession, you're an actor and a voice actor,
Yeah.
and uh, you speak about how the origin of this game kind of was born out of the loss from your father. So I was always wanted to ask, why did you choose game as a medium instead of your profession, which is movies and TVs? I
Yeah.
wanted to dig into that.
It's my father introduced me to games. So, it was one of those ones where if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have fallen in love with games. I wouldn't know what games were. And it's not even that he just introduced me to it. He allowed me to enjoy it, right? In the sense that I think at the time growing up, like a lot of the time, people were, and there was a lot of talk about how games are bad for you, and
Mm.
games aren't necessarily the great thing. It's a waste of time, da 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 da. And I remember my dad being like, actually, no, you know what? You're enjoying this. You're having a good time. Like, dive deeper into that. Enjoy it more. Like, play more. It's all good. It's all fun. As long as you're enjoying and you're getting something out of it, then that's all good. So it just made sense really to honor him through that medium. Also, the experience that I'm still even going through now, of grief, this journey of grief. I feel like it's one of those ones where it's such an isolated feeling. It's like a very kind of, it's unique to everyone's own sort of angle. Um, so I wanted to create an experience that can be interacted and shared actively. I think with film and TV, a lot of it is passive. you know, you can watch something and kind of move on and forget about it. And not to say that you can't do that necessarily, you know, that doesn't happen with games. It does, but the act of actively being part of this journey and this experience of the character, which is what I connected to when I was growing up, really made sense to sort of explore with this story as well.
Um, I agree. I don't want to get too personal on this podcast, but we've also had the misfortune of losing a parent as well as our dad as well. So when we saw a game like this and we saw the kind of the message that you're trying to portray through this game, we really did resonate with on a personal level as well.
Right.
And speaking of like the story, there is a lot the character demo that you get that the tales that Zhao gave us were I digested it. I really enjoyed it because there was an aspect in I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, but there was an aspect in the demo where he's on the bridge and he's like very snappy and snippet with
Yeah.
death, which is another thing we have to talk about. And also he then scares that girl, and it's like that to me was like it just resonates so deeply because it's like it's the small things that really like out of nowhere
That
will
trigger.
just trigger you just out of left field, and you're like, why did that trigger me? And it's like you want to try and logically explain it to yourself,
But you can't.
yeah.
It's one of those ones where I think it's like, you know, the thing I remember when we were writing it as well. You know, there was a moment where we were like, and even when I was so we wrote it and it made, and you was like, yeah, okay, cool, that makes sense to a degree because there's been obstacle after obstacle. And then, you know, when performing it, I remember thinking to myself, he's a bit calm, you know, the whole way through. But the thing is that he's not calm. He's like he's got a goal and a mission, and he's getting there, and he'll do it. He'll do everything he can to get that mission. And then as soon as this thing snaps, and it's that one, you know, the straw that broke the camel's back kind of thing. That's when when reality kicks in, and when he's really kind of cheesed off. So it was, you know, it was important to kind of capture those small elements and moments throughout the game as a whole in order to sort of represent and just show that journey of grief authentically.
I agree, and it's really nice to see it done in such a like masterful way. But one of the big like for this game, one of the big draws for me was the Bantu culture, that aspect of like this is gonna sound bad, but like when it comes to like the Western media, I feel like there's such an untapped reserve when it comes to that specific culture in general. So I wanted to ask, like, this might be a little bit cheeky, but like, was it you wanted to tell this story and the Bantu like inspiration aided it, or was it that you wanted to have the Bantu culture as the forefront and then tell this story? So it might be seem a little cheeky because
No.
Gone.
Go on. Why do you think it's cheeky?
I think it's cheeky because it's like sometimes there is like a growing movement where it's like it feels like, oh, this kind of thing is just trying to be put in our faces, when it's like, oh no, there's like a really massive like mythology there that's just like untapped, and I see it like in small places like all over the time. I'm like, oh no, that's South African. Oh no, that's Congolese. So it's like,
So this is the thing. You know, at the end of the day, I'm always going to be I'm a storyteller. So I'll tell whatever story comes to the forefront of my mind, of whatever, you know, whatever fits the narrative properly. That's important. It's important to be, you know, as authentic and honest to the story as possible. For me, again, that Bantu culture as nature of it all. My father's Kenyan. You know, I'm half. I'm technically. I've got a Kenyan passport. You know, I'm Kenyan.
yes.
I'm British as well, and like my perspective is, you know, and the stories that my father would tell me were very much, you know, led from these spaces. The stories that he would be told when he was a kid, you know, about my grandfather. It's just my perspective, and so for me, you know, at the heart of it, what was important was to depict this story as authentically and truthfully as possible, right? It was about grief, and it will always be about grief. And you can even add, you know, you could change the characters' names and change the locations as where it is. This at its core, it's about grief. However, to tell it authentically and honestly and truthfully, it had to be, for example, voiced over in Swahili. It had to have Swahili, you know, notes about it. The way that the interaction with death, for example, and that communication and the relationship between the kid and death is it's specific, because it, you know, it's those levels of specificity that allows it to be universal as well. You know, that's kind of what I find as well. I think the more specific you are and the more kind of honest you are, the more you can, the wider you can connect with human beings as a whole. And I think, you know, I remember, you know, being asked that as well, like quite a few times in regards to like, did you kind of start with the Bantu myth and kind of being led by that, or did you or did you start with grief? And it's always grief. It's always because again, that's the human element of the story. It's just because it's from my perspective and from my experiences, because I'm in the position that I'm in, this position of being able to call the shots, that I'm able to allow, able to bring a different light and perspective on something that we don't necessarily see. Like, in a lot of like sort of, you know, where I grew up anyway, death is almost seen as an end, where actually truly it's, in a lot of Bantu cultures, it's almost seen as like the beginning, and that they never leave us, that they're always there with us. And I think like that's something again that is something that I really wanted to play with. The fact that even Zhao, for example, wants to he can bring his father back by telling death, I want my dad back.
What's up?
You know what I mean? Literally, so I think like that is, that's again, it's about pulling from a perspective which comes from a place of honesty and truth,
I think that it's great that you're doing this, and I think that does it ever like psych you out that like this kind of body of work is going to be added to like the pantheon of like Black Panther and all that kind of thing, where it's like they like represent like that kind of authenticity of African culture, but done in a way that's like palatable. It's like, oh, I understand this story, even if the people don't look like me. So having that kind of like you're
effect,
gonna yeah.
It's exciting but also terrifying because I think there's a lot of feeling of like look, don't get me wrong, I'm not necessarily the one representative or the answer, or I know everything about Black culture in a way. However, what I do want to do, or what I want to essentially aim to do, is inspire other stories, and basically and other people who want to tell these kind of stories and be like, look, there's room for it, there's space for it, there's a want for it, there is a hunger for it. And I think like that has been so clear. I will never forget pitching to EA and telling them, this is the story that I want to tell. It's about grief, but it's set within this sort of world. And this is, it's from my, it's inspired by my father, by my, the stories that he tell me of my grandfather. This is essentially where I want to, and it's also a celebration of all these other cool, Bantu cultures, which have graced, I have been graced within my life. Like, this is what I want it to do. And I remember EA being like, yeah, let's go for it. Because, there is, the only other thing you could think of is Black Panther to a degree. And like, even that as well, like I can't even describe the feeling it had for me seeing that on screen and being like, yo, I ain't just the best friend anymore.
Oh yes.
I mean? Like, I ain't that anymore. I can be a hero. And I think it's so hard to kind of express, but people get it. And I feel like that's essentially what I wanted to do here as well, not only with the game, but also behind the scenes, and show like, look, who I am and what I represent. Like, again, I am literally just a human being who just wants to tell stories and enjoy telling stories. Yes, okay, because of the way I look, people have their ideas and thoughts about that. But ultimately, I'm as human being as any one of you. And the truth is, right, is that if you want to do the same thing, you guys can. I know for a fact that, and I say this as well, like, I think like the aim here is not to make like the best kind of African representative game. I want to inspire that next person to make an African game even 10 times better than mine. Because then we're growing, then we're building, and then we're pushing. And I think like that's essentially, that's my aim.
Yeah, we are like-minded. I say that like what you call it. Like I'm a creative director myself.
No, I feel it. I feel it.
Speaking of the game, blah, blah, blah. I got to have my hands on it. I got to play the demo, and the switching between the sun and moon mask, very fun. I like how it's like holistically done, where like the lore, the style, the gameplay, all of that comes together to really tell the story of the sun and the moon mask. And can you just like explain how did that feature come about? Like what made you decide to have this like the shaman do the sun and the moon now switch up?
So truly, like the mask switching really came from this idea of, when, and again, I speak from my experience, but also having spoken with other people as well in regards to how they felt when going through grief. It comes from the experience of essentially being like, okay, I have to put on my professional mask today, or I have to put on like my friend's mask or my family mask. Even though I'm not feeling too great, I've got to just kind of soldier on and keep going, right? And that's really where it was inspired from. And the ideas of shamans or sort of ngangas, there is a saying, or there's a belief that once you put the mask of a god on, you become almost like a conduit of that god in a lot of kind of different Bantu cultures.
Mm.
And so for me, it was like, oh, that's really interesting. What if this shaman of, Zhao of Amandla is essentially he dons the mask. I mean, his job is essentially to allow the easing passing of spirits, to one realm to the other. What if, for example, the masks that he does wear is that balance of life and death, the sun and the moon? Because again, in a lot of sort of Bantu sort of cultures, be it either the Maasai or even even within the Congolese sort of belief, the idea of the sun and moon is there seen as like it's a life giver and a death giver. There's a sense of like balance there, and that's kind of where it came from. On a technical aspect, I really wanted to play with this freedom of flow. Like it wasn't a weapon wheel that you had to switch from, and have to kind of choose, because I think that would break the flow again and break that kind of balance of life and death. So that was really important for me to kind of lean into and play, because again, at the end of the day, my journey, I felt it hasn't stopped, and it just continues without me. Like, I think the biggest lesson that I learned, for example, was that the world just continued to spin after my father passed. So I wanted that feeling as well within the game. Like you could literally, you could just constantly keep moving and you're still going, or if you stay still, you could there's still a flow. There isn't a break of that. That's what we
Right.
really wanted to capture.
Yes, and the most important question of all is, where can I purchase a real life-size sun and moon mask? That's like where I was going with this. I'm not gonna lie
That's where
to
you're
you.
leading it, right? No, oh man, listen, yo, we're gonna let's get this game out and let it hit markets and do well. Then we can start talking about merch.
Yeah. You're saying that like I won't cosplays out. Like I'm telling you right now.
No, do it, please,
Oh,
please.
you're daring me, bro. Like I'm gonna send you a picture of like what you call it, me at like MCM, full on
No,
half naked with the
no.
mask and everything.
Hey, wear it proudly.
um, cheeky question. I saw the title. It's Tales of Kenzera and then Zhao. So is there maybe a Tales of Kenzera sequel on the horizon?
I mean, look, I always say this. I'm very much of the generation of like I used to play Pokemon on my Game Boy, watch the TV show, and collect the cards. Like it was a world for me that I just wanted to be a part of, right? From in my eyes, I want it. I want there to be. It's a universe. It's a universe that can exist both in TV, film, games, comics. So yes, I do want this world to kind of exist as a whole. And I think like, there is a sense of, the story of Zhao, for example, could only be told as a game because that's how it was built. The studio is I've designed the studio, or building the studio with the intention of storytelling being the forefront, but ultimately you have to respect um the medium in which you put them in. Yes, the Tales of Kenzera universe is large, it's big, and I've got this whole plan of like where I want it to go and what I want it to do and where I want it to be. Like that was from the get-go. So yeah, you can definitely, say like, yeah, Abu has definitely got a plan as to where he wants this to head, and there's definitely plans of be it sequels or ideas or other stories that he wants to share. But ultimately the key thing here, right, is it depends on what the story is and what medium it needs to be shared in, as a whole.
We will be eagerly waiting. And actually,
Good.
you touched upon something about the medium, because we spoke about the medium as a game,
Yeah.
but 2D side scroller. So I'm a fighting game kid. I'm also a shoot 'em kid. So why did you just decide on this type of genre of 2D
Yeah. So
Metroid kind of any kind of game?
yeah. So really, again, it comes down to the fact that the earliest memories that I have of my father, and playing games with him was essentially playing games like Sonic
Mm.
or Mario, playing these platformers, really. And like, they were 2D and you'd run from one side to the other. And recently, like 4 years ago, before we started making this game, the I remember having this, like, I've been playing games, as I say, like all my life, right? But it was playing Ori and the Blind Forest on the Switch while I was doing like press for Raised by Wolves, or just starting out Raised by Wolves even. Where I had this feeling when I think it was a waterfall section where I completed it, and I was like, oh, this feels great. Like after many, many multiple tries. And the last time I ever really truly, it made me realize, like, the last time I ever actually really felt that way was when I completed like a level of Sonic back in the day, when that was like hard for me, you know, as a kid. And that was with my, you know, feeling that sense of accomplishment with my dad next to me. And that's when it all kind of clicked, like, oh, I know exactly what this game needs to be. It needs to be, you know, this. It needs to be a video game, or this story. It needs to be a video game. It needs to be in the 2D sort of vibe, and it needs to feel like, it just needs to feel continuous and moving, you know. And that's sort of where it sort of stemmed for, and why it had to be like this game. Because I, you know, I'm a big Tekken player. I'm also, you know, I'm into my,
Is that
like,
right?
you know,
Okay.
shoot. Yeah, man, I love Tekken. You know, shooting games as well is my thing. Like, I love the, I mean, I played too many. But the thing is, the specific nature of it all, like, everything had a reason, and everything has a reason. You know, I was also very aware that, like, the team that I was going to be building, you know, we're not going to be like 100, 150 people odd. We're only going to be 30. So every choice has to matter, because it's very hard then to change and pivot, you know, while you're in production and later down the line, just because there's not many of us. And it will be very costly, and you know, time, you know, it take a lot of time. So yeah, that's why it just had to be specifically this 2D side scroller, and really truly the genre of it being a Metroidvania, it comes from the feeling of wanting to, what's the word, convey grief in the best way possible. Because I mean, as a genre, you know, Metroidvanias are built to sort of throw you in the middle of something that you have no idea about,
Oh yeah.
and deal with it, right? And that's essentially grief. Like, grief does that. Grief throws you in this, no matter how much you prepare for it, it will throw you into this thing with you having no idea where to go or what to do and how to deal with it. It feels incredibly isolating. But, you know, the longer you spend time in it, weirdly, the more comfortable you get in it. And even though it will still throw things at you, it still feels like, actually, you know what? I'm getting used to it, you know?
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic that you raised. It does really speak close to what we've had to do with them when it comes to our grief as well.
Yeah.
Um, funny enough, does the drowning Sonic theme still give you nightmares like it does for me?
It's horrible. It's horrible, isn't it? It's haunting.
Bruh, I'm telling you, like that one, like I don't know what sound designer, I don't know what he was on or what he was doing, yeah, but he succeeded.
It was haunting.
Oh my gosh. Oh, um, I I'm a big fan of also Sonic as well as the side scroller as well. That kind of genre of gaming. I grew up on that period, and I'm very glad to hear that your dad was very much a pro gaming kind of enthusiast, whereas like a
Yeah.
lot of us, especially for our family, it was like a sludge trying to convince our
Oh,
parents
bro,
that
don't,
like
like, listen. My mum and dad with the well, even my mum was a bit like, you're spending too much time on these games.
yeah,
Surely you should be studying.
yeah.
You know, like, don't worry. I know exactly what you're talking about, man. Like, honestly, as I say, I remember even having the conversation with my mum and dad, being like, I want to be an actor, and them looking at me like, oh God, what have you done? Like, this is, oh, okay, you know, prove it then. And, you know,
Yeah.
and that was it. Like, they gave me the space for it. But yeah, many of my other family members who've been like, oh, I really like to do the arts, they're like, that's great, here's a book on chemistry.
For us, it was the same way. We were like, you can do whatever you want as long as you get your degree. Then you can do whatever you like.
That's it. Honestly. Oh man, you know, it's funny. Like, so you know, I went to drama school, and you know, after the 3 years, so it really, the drama school, the way that you get in is you audition for it, and if you know, you audition, and if you're lucky, you get in. It isn't really based on grades. It's not that. It's all about, you know, the auditioning and acting prowess that you have. And I was fortunate enough to get in. And, you know, the 3 years were tough. Like, it was really, really hard and strenuous. And at the end of it, you know, you don't necessarily graduate. Really, truly, you're working towards getting an agent and working in the industry and learning about your craft. the graduate, the degree is almost like a bonus. My mum was insistent of me going to get my like degree in Kent somewhere, dressing up with the whole like hat and the overall. And we've still got that photo, and I'm holding this degree here, thinking I'm never gonna touch this thing for the rest of my life. But sure, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get that. I feel that, man.
For us, it was we had to make sure that my dad had like he had like like not costume, but like he had like a uniform he would wear to
Right.
each and every one of our graduations. So you look at all of our graduation photos, and he's wearing the exact same thing.
Exact same one.
So it's like, yeah, he knew his work was done because like all his children were now graduates.
Oh, that's great.
So yeah, for us it was, and because we're a sibling, we're like family of four, so I got two older sisters who are pagans, and I've also got a younger brother, and and I got a younger brother. So for us, it was great for like the elder sibling to like my sisters spoil my younger brother way too much for my liking. So for him, he gets to be like the esports hopeful, but he's very good, and he's actually making his way. He's actually going to the semi-finals right now, or finals, I believe.
Oh wow!
So he's done very good. But like I look at him, I'm like, he's living my dream, like right there.
Honestly,
like,
this is it, man. This is it.
So it's like, but anyway, I'm very proud of him, and I'm also like
Good.
thankful that what you call it. My sisters like to send propaganda at me, like saying how grateful I should be to have two older sisters, and I never ever feel grateful. But yeah, before we get like off topic with our kind of family mess, I wanted to also like deep dive more into the actual game itself and what was it like building the script for this? Because I know that you've spoken in a lot of interviews about how you have a friend who's like you've known since way back when, and you guys were able to like come together and like craft this script. What was the like process that you did, and how did it differ from your profession to game industry?
Well, this is the thing. We have no idea, man. Like, I just, again, the thing that I only knew about within the game space was like, because I've read enough sort of game scripts to have an idea that like, oh, the story kind of track is similar, same, but different, right? But it's like a different beast. And, all I knew was that, okay, I can at least bring the storytelling prowess to this thing. I don't know how the script format's going to be or what we should do or where the technical aspect of it all kind of like, runs in. Because it's one thing just writing a script for, a TV show and a film, right? All you need is an app, like, either Final Cut or not Final Cut, sorry, like, I think it is, yes, it's Final Draft, sorry, Final Draft, or like, whatever app there is, and you just write the script and then you give it to someone. But for a game, like the actual implementation of it, the systems of it, the elements of that, like, I had no idea. So really, truly, it was just me and a friend of mine who grew up with my father as well. Like, we were school friends, and we're still best of friends now.
Nice.
And we were just like, look, you've seen me go through this process from an external place. I've kind of been in it. Let's work on writing this thing together. And really truly, the process of it was a lot of rewrites, a lot of like thinking, a lot of this, a lot of that, and just trying to marry and craft that, that final bit, which is exactly like film and TV. And that's the thing, I think what was really fascinating. It's like the whole process of making a game. It's like a marathon or like a long film or a long TV show. It's like there are so many elements that kind of take longer than what you would normally think or expect. Whereas in film and TV, it's really quick. By the time like the game that I'd started this game to like now, I'd filmed like another season of Raised by Wolves. I'd filmed a season of House of the Dragon. I ended up getting, filming, Napoleon, doing another film. Like I'd done so many projects because the machine of film and TV just works so fast. But the processes of it all and the conjuring of it all, the pre-production, the production, the post-production, they all exist within the game space. It just takes longer. So really, truly, that's, the script was something that was being constantly changed and updated as we went along, but we were also learning very much learning like what it means to write for a game, because again, it is a different beast. It's a different sort of um space. I mean, I'm sure we've all played games where it's the script, the pacing feels a bit off, but that's
Mm.
also because you just don't know what the player's going to be doing. You know, I might play a game for like an hour or two, leave it for like, 10 days because I want to jump on another game, come back to the game and be like, I don't know what's happening or where I am and why these people are talking this way, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's really the process was a funny one, because I think again, I'm also learning that there is really no right or wrong way. All you can do is try and adhere to some form of structure and try and again, tell an honest story, tell a real true story, and hope that the performers as well give an honest depiction of it too.
I wanted to dive into the characters, especially Kulunga,
Mm,
the god of death. And I found his like the interactions in the demo, I found his interactions really like interesting, because a lot of the times whenever we see the depictions of death, it's either he's really, really bitter, like Hades, where
yeah.
he doesn't want to do anything. He's just like
Mm,
screw the heavenly world. But it's very few times where I've seen the depiction of death who's like very much on the side of life. And it's like
yeah.
he comes and he's this wise person. Well, I can't say person, like this wise avatar who's
Yeah.
able to like drop these like golden gems onto
Mm,
the like this naive boy that's like going
hmm.
through this period of grief. How were you able to like craft these characters with also the inspiration from the Bantu culture? What was the
Yeah.
process that you used?
It was again just pulling a lot from the what was again what kind of stood out for me in regards to like the tales and the stories that I would hear of, be it like of Kalunga. Kalunga is very much like Hades, is not only a being, but it's also a place, And I think like in the way in which Kalunga is depicted in quite a few myths is almost very human, very kind of also makes mistakes, is defensive, is sort of just very human, personable, right? A
Mm.
friend as well. And so that really sort of led me to kind of, again, the approach to death in a lot of Bantu cultures is very much not necessarily seen as an antagonist. It's seen as just a part of life, a way of life. And it was important for me to also depict it as that, as a sense of this thing of this being who is just a part of our lives, is there to be spoken to, but is also there to kind of be ignored. And like, but they just are. And I think like that was, something that I wanted to really depict. The only ever depiction of death I've seen where it's kind of resembled that feeling of almost like personable, funnily enough, is in the Sandman
Yeah.
with death. And I think like that was, again, the only depiction I've seen where it feels almost personable, whereas it's so rare. Whereas actually again in a lot of Bantu culture, be it in the Maasai or even the Zulu or the Xhosa, like it's death is it just is.
Mm.
It's there, you know?
I respect and I really agree with that kind of statement. But I don't want to like drag this on, but I just want to say like the game's coming out on the 23rd of April. Is
Mm.
that correct? Yes. So I'll be clearing out my I'll ask my boss lady if I can have the entire day off for that one.
Dive in, please.
Yes. So we at Melanin Gamers, we can't wait to get our hands on this and really play the
Good.
story to its fullest. Is there anything that we should add? Like, where can we find more about this game and where for the
Yeah,
audience?
And
I
the
mean,
lore as
so
well. The lore has
and
been amazing.
the law,
We
right?
love like laws of stuff like this. Like I've been talking about it here in Ghana, and I was just like, we want to add it to one of the arenas that people play at, so they can come and play and experience the
Yeah,
game. Because it's just it would be. I was playing the demos here in Ghana. I was like, this feels like magic to play a game
yeah,
like this. Here on the continent, I was just like, this is really important. This
yeah.
game.
It is. And like for me, it's one of those ones where again, the gaming scene in Africa as a whole is huge, but people don't know that. And it's like it's huge. Like I remember when I was, in South Africa filming Raised by Wolves, the amount of studios and the cool stuff that they're creating and just the people, like it's huge. In Kenya as well, like in Nairobi, like the game scene is massive. So like it's like these places, like it, it was really, it was just really important for me to kind of, be like, hey, look, this is just the entry. Like, you guys need to look over there. Like, that's where that's truly where it's at, guys. But yeah, like yeah, as I said, like it's gonna be on all platforms. Like, it was important for us to make it on all platforms in order to kind of make it as accessible as possible, make it relatively cheap as well, even though it's a full experience, and it's 8 to 10 hours for the main story. We really wanted to still make it like, it's $20, the price of pizza, for example, like a takeaway or whatever. Like, that was
I'm
important
here
for
for it.
us.
Don't worry.
Like, it's, for me, it was, and for us as a team, it was just one of those ones where if you had the opportunity to do something, do it right, man, and try and give it to as many people as possible, because that's what's important. Like, it's not about, again, yeah, okay, the business mind is like, oh yeah, make money, but like, actually, at the end of the day, it's an art form. It's an art. It's there to be, to be experienced, and it's an expression. Why gate that, you know? And I think, yeah, I'd love. I'm sort of in the mindset as well, because thank God I'm blessed with a Kenyan passport. I'm like, maybe I could just open an arm up in Nairobi, and like, begin starting doing that cool stuff. Again, it all depends on how great and how successful this game is. I mean, especially with this industry of today,
Nah, tell me
it's
about it.
like all playing on that. But it is
Okay, Abu, you've convinced me. I'll take a sick day.
okay. Great.
You convinced me.
Yeah, okay. Jeez, man. Thanks.
I'll take
Yeah,
a
but
sick
that's it.
day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that okay, Anzi? Don't worry. You'll get my sick form. Don't worry. Don't worry. Don't worry. um, but yeah, we're doing nationals as well. We've actually opened another branch in Ghana as well. So yeah,
So
definitely
beautiful,
would
man.
go for that as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Abu, for giving us the time to sit down and really just dive into um Tales of Kensaku Zao. It's been like seeing it like go from strength to strength to strength. I'm also in the Discord as well, so I get to pop in every now
Oh,
and then.
amazing.
Yeah, so it's just seeing it go from strength to strength to strength, and seeing like those small little like snippets of videos where they get to discuss the kind of art form of it. Very well done. It's what I do. I sit down and it's like de-stress with those kinds of videos. So seeing that
Yeah.
is really, really like really nice to see like our culture being really represented in that kind of that aspect. So thank you for
I'm
having this
so glad.
time.
Thank you.